Welcome to the episode of The Art of Volunteering. My name is Stormy Bell, and I'm your host. Today, I'm speaking with a long-time friend, Jeanne Martin. She is the executive director of Meals on Wheels North Jersey, and we're going to talk about how volunteers are vital to their delivery model. I'm going to introduce Jeanne and let her tell you a little bit about herself.
Hi, Stormy. Hi, everyone.
Huh?
I'm Jeanne Martin, and I'm the executive director, as Stormy said, for Meals on Wheels. I've been involved with this organization for about 17 or 18 years. Prior to that, I had worked as an administrator for another nonprofit called Christian Overcomers, a disability ministry. But when this job came available, I kind of always wanted this job. Helping people, serve people, elderly people has always been a passion of mine, and feeding people has always been something that I felt, even though I'm not a very good cook, but I like to make sure people are fed. We've been around. Our organization is celebrating our 50th anniversary this year. We were started by a very dynamic woman named Margaret Cook in 1972. So there are 5,000 Meals on Wheels programs in the United States. And if you've seen one, you've seen one. They're all very different. There are Meals on Wheels programs that are strictly run by governments, by towns, by states, by counties. And then there are many nonprofits, and some run by churches, some run by temples. We're all different, but we have the same basic mission of helping seniors get nutrition.
Oh, that's awesome. How many people do you serve, and how many volunteers do you have?
It's kind of interesting. We serve about 200 clients right now in our area, and we cover 30 towns in northern Bergen County. But we have over 500 volunteers. We ask our volunteers to drive once a month, so it's not a heavy lift for them. We also have volunteers that assist us with our accounting. As a matter of fact, I'm here on a Saturday, and my volunteer accountant is here this morning doing our billing system. We have a volunteer board of about 12 members now who meet monthly. And our volunteers, the volunteering for actually delivering the meals takes about an hour and a half to 2 hours. Our drivers pick up the meals at a central location and then deliver to between 10 and 15 clients. Our motto is we're more than a meal. And because of our volunteers, we are more than a meal. Our volunteers are the eyes and ears. Many of them don't have any family members living nearby. So our volunteers are eyes on our clients. They see if Mrs. Jones doesn't look the same as she did the last time they delivered. The house is more a mess. Their food is not being eaten. There's a lot of trash lying around. So that is a cue for us. Or we've caught people who've had minor strokes because of our volunteers, or elder abuse because of our volunteers. They step in and see, okay, there's someone there who's not allowing us to, the home health aide is there, but she's not letting us interact with the clients, or she's very combative with us when we want to see or visit with the client. And we've had a number of police involvements where people have been abusers have been arrested, and that's been because our volunteers have got the eyes. Yeah, it's really something. They're a lot more than a meal.
So like if your volunteer sees someone who they're slurring their words and they don't normally slur the words, what are your next steps? Like, what do you do? Like report back, and you have like connections to their family members? Is that how that works?
Yeah, and it's not one size fits all for every instance of what happened. So we did have someone not too long ago. The driver was very concerned, so they called us, and we called their family member who was out of state. But we had a conversation. So, what would you like us to do? And they said, can you call the police and have them go over?
Okay.
In another instance, we've done that, and the family member has gone over and taken them to the doctor and found out what's going on. When we suspect self-harm or someone's
Harming
being
them.
abused by someone else, we either contact 911 ourselves through the either the 911 system, or we call Adult Protective Services, which they'll send somebody out right away to do an evaluation.
Wow. I didn't realize it was that involved. I mean, my mom's been a recipient of Meals on Wheels in Northeast Pennsylvania, and
Mhm.
my grandmother before her. So, like, I'm familiar with them bringing the food and kind of checking on them and having an update. There's been a couple times with my grandmother who lived to be 97. So it was,
Wow.
and she still lived on her own up until like the last 6 years of her life.
Wow.
And they would check, and if something wasn't right, my mom would get a call, "Need to go check on your mom, just go up and have a conversation, see how she's doing."
Yeah.
So I knew that happened, but not to the extent that you just shared.
Yeah, we're very fortunate to have a licensed social worker that works for us part time. And when something comes up, when a driver calls about a client that they're concerned, that is the start of the process. And then if we get another, we report it, we record it, and we report it if necessary. And sometimes we just take notes. You know, if it's not something that looks like imminent danger, we'll take notes. And if we hear from another volunteer, that's when we really step up the game.
You stepped up and things.
Yeah, we've had one woman who's, had been with us for probably 12 years, and it got to the point where we had to call not just Adult Protective Services, but 262 Health, and she is currently now, against her will, taken to a hospital for evaluation, and she had no one to take her, help her with her affairs. So the state is taking guardianship of her. I
How
just
sweet.
spoke to her social worker yesterday in the hospital, and she said, Jean, you're the only person that's called in regard to her. In the 2 months she's been here, you're the only person. Is there anybody?" And I said, "Just people in the neighborhood."
Yeah,
She'd been scammed out of over $100,000. This woman. So
amazing.
yeah, so
Wow.
complicated.
Um,
It's a
Complicated.
wonderful complicated, but it's simple, but it's complicated.
I So, if someone comes on and they're gonna be a driver, what type of training do they have to go through?
We're stepping up our game on that one too. They first there's a background check that we do. So someone fills out an application online. We get the application, we send them a background check. Background check comes back. They come in and meet with me, and it's interesting. You can see a lot about a person in just an interview. It
Mm,
quickly like, oh, they're not in this for the right reason, or they are in this for the right reason.
right.
Um, and then they go out with one of our client coordinators who takes them and shows them the ropes, because you can't. It's one of those things you can show somebody a video, but until they're actually in it doing it,
Experiencing it.
you're
Yeah.
experiencing it, you don't understand what's involved. And people have been doing it. They once they do it once or twice, they're hooked.
Yeah. So you have strong retention
Oh
with your
yeah,
volunteers?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I had the longest volunteer we had was over 40 years. Yeah,
And
and
you're
it
around
turned
50,
out,
so that's so they got in pretty close to the beginning.
yeah, yeah. So she started when the organization started. She started in 1972 as a volunteer, and she ended up being a recipient of Meals on Wheels before she passed away. So yeah,
Full circle.
yeah. So some people do it for like a year or two. We've had an interesting mix of volunteers. We've had college students, which have been a lot of fun. We had pre-med students from Ramapo College volunteering for us once a month. Um, a lot of stay-at-home moms over the years have worked with us. A lot of retirees. We still have a lot of retirees who, younger, right, retirees, and actually some older retirees. Our oldest retiree that volunteers is 92, 93.
Oh, God
Yeah,
bless them.
yeah. God bless her. And lately, an interesting group that's come in are business people who can afford to take, who either have been home because of the pandemic and
Mhm.
can spare an hour or two a month to deliver during lunchtime, or just business owners who said, you know what, I want to give back. Rotary clubs have volunteered for us, women's clubs. So
Mhm.
it's we're we're all over the map.
That's awesome. Wow. Tell me a little bit of, well, you talked about like you have like what 500 volunteers, but how You are a paid staff and you have how many other people?
We have four-ish,
4.
no,
So
no,
so
four-ish.
organizationally, you're quite small even though you have
Yeah,
a large reach.
yeah, yeah. So we have a part-time business manager who Lisa does more than that title would allude to. Um, it's everything, everything. Then we have Amanda, who's our client coordinator, who's in the kitchen in the morning by 6 o'clock, and she gets all the meals packed for our clients, and then comes back and gets all the computer part of that done. And Allie, our social worker, is part time as well. And then we have a van driver, Nick, who transports the meals from our kitchen, the kitchen that we cater with, down to a central pickup point for our
Okay.
drivers.
So your cooks are volunteers too?
No, we hire a caterer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, our vendor right now is Rockland County Meals on Wheels, which is an
Okay.
adjoining county to where we are. So
Mhm.
they do our meals and we pay them to do the meals. But
Okay.
Amanda, our employee, is in the kitchen with them, making sure our meals are done properly.
Very cool. And people can you work with like dietary restrictions and you're able to
Hmm.
accommodate that.
Yeah, we
Is
have. It's funny. We have some people who are like, we've been like, she's been gone a long, long time. This lady Helen, so she was very picky with her meals. She would say, "I don't want any fish." Okay, no fish. I don't want any beef. Okay, no beef, no fish, no beef. Okay, I don't want any pork. Okay, no fish, no beef, pork. I don't want any chicken. I don't want any pasta. Okay, so this leaves like no, there's no protein. I can come up with something. And she's like, oh, let's start all over again. Just no fish.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, we do the best we do the best we can. Food is something that people like to control. So it's not always so easy, but we do the best we can.
Well, I'm going to give you an opportunity to love on your organization now. Anything you want to share, like how awesome you are and how awesome your volunteers are, just go right ahead.
Oh my gosh, we it's really it's so in Bergen County, this is National Volunteer Month, and I think it's everywhere.
Yes.
And so there's a local agency in Bergen County called the Volunteer Center, and they said, "Well, do you have any special volunteer that you want to honor?" And I'm like, "How can I possibly pick one?" It's like, how can I pick one? Because I've got 500 really conscientious, considerate, incredible people who are there at their scheduled time, getting things ready. They're on there. They're on it. Um, it's as I mentioned earlier. Our motto is more than a meal. We A couple of months ago. I don't know if you read the story. A couple of months ago, one of my long ago clients. We'd lost track of her. She had been another client who had been scammed and had a very serious decline in her mental abilities and had been taken out of her home. And we lost track of her until I saw her obituary in the paper. And so I said, you know what? She meant a lot to me, Marilyn. So I'm going to go to the funeral. So I went to the cemetery at the scheduled time, and nobody came.
Oh,
So I called the funeral home and I was like, hey, you know what? This was scheduled for 3 o'clock. I'm here. I've been here since 2:45, and it's 3:15, and nobody's come. What's happening? Oh, we were done early for the day. We didn't think anybody would be there, so we buried her early.
oh.
So Stormy. I mean, I'm a pretty I was like,
You got your
so,
jersey on.
so I called I called a couple of people who I said, you know what, this isn't right. We have to have a funeral for her, a proper funeral. So I called one of the ministers I knew, and the local restaurant owner who's been part of Meals on Wheels, our program for 50 years. It
Mhm.
started with him and our founder 50 years ago. So he said, okay, I'll do. We're gonna have a funeral, and you got the minister. We'll get our volunteers and we'll go over and we'll have a proper burial for her. So we had a service for her, and we had a reporter come, and the reporter put it into the record, the local newspaper. And
Right.
out of the woodwork came these people that knew her, out of the woodwork.
Really?
She was the it girl. I remember Marilyn. She was so beautiful. We thought she was going to be a movie star in Hollywood. I remember her husband. They owned a gas station in town. So it's I don't know. It was really, we had about I guess about 10 people there, and we all remembered Marilyn. She was kind of a difficult, at times ornery person, but
Right.
she would write me letters every single month.
Oh,
These are
wow.
letters from Marilyn. She's been off our program for like 8 years, but I mean, these are like two-sided letters from Marilyn every single month, telling me how much she loved the volunteers and she loved the food and everything was scrumptious.
Wow.
And
Wow. The impact you just don't realize.
you don't realize
Yeah.
what, one small simple thing of delivering a meal, how it impacts a person's life.
Yeah.
And just a smile, a visit. We have a number of kids that, from all over, that send cards and letters to our clients. And I thought, oh man, they probably don't like getting all this stuff. They love it. They absolutely love it because they don't have anybody in their life.
Yes. And as they get older, their circles get smaller and smaller.
Yeah,
So, yeah, right. They look forward to seeing a smiling face every day or whatever schedule they're on.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I always encourage parents if their kids are off from school, sure, they're like, oh, can we bring our kids? I'm like, absolutely. To see young people, that's like such a great spark.
Yes. And it's good for them to see the whole cycle of life too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's all good
Very
stuff.
cool.
We had a number of years ago, I had a boy call up. He was a young kid, 13, getting ready for his bar mitzvah, so he's not quite 13. And I'm like, what am I? It was the first time I'd used kids as volunteers, and he goes, like, what am I going to do with this kid? I said, what do you like to do? He said, I like football and I like dogs. I'm like, so I said, well, what do you want to do? So he was awesome. He wrote down 20 questions to ask our clients. He recorded the questions. He asked the question, met with them, asked the questions, wrote them down, and then gave it back to them as a gift, as like a life review. So some of the
Oh,
questions were,
wow.
oh, it was awesome. It was awesome. It was really something. So there was a
And he's
gentleman,
12. I mean, he hasn't had his bar mitzvah, so he's 12.
his father, yeah, yeah. So he, I think he's in his 20s now in college. Really sweet guy, and we've kept in touch. With his mom and dad live in the same town as me, and so when there was a gentleman in the building that he interviewed here, Mr. Sabon, who was a Holocaust survivor from Tunisia, and they
Okay.
had a special bond. And Mr. Sabon's father was a rabbi in Tunisia, and during World War II, the Germans, it switched back and forth. The Germans and the Allies had control of Tunisia, so he
Okay.
lived under German rule and under the Allied rule. And just when the war ended, they were getting ready to build internment camps in his town, and then the war ended. So he and this young man became really close. And so when he made his bar mitzvah, he invited Mr. Sabone and myself to attend, and then talked about
Oh,
the impact Mr. Sabone had on his life. So Mr. Sabone passed away last year. He was so charming. He's French Tunisia. He was French, and he worked in a French restaurant. He was just so worldly and so courtly. And so when he passed away, um, this young man's family reached out to me and how much he had meant to them. So yeah,
priceless.
it really is something. It really is something.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. This was fun.
Anytime,
Uh,
Stormy. It
and
was great
it,
catching up with you.
it's great catching up with you. And thank you for all the amazing work that you're doing in North Jersey
Thank
and
you so
affecting
much.
so many lives. All right. Well, thank you for joining us today for the Art of Volunteering. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Have a great day. Bye bye.